guys, welcome back to Infinite Possibilities, the podcast where we explore the lives of amazing people, their choices, challenges and opportunities. And today I have a very special guest, Nick. Hello.
Hi, nice to be here.
Welcome back to part 2.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, so now we're going to get into the juicy stuff, not just the work related. So what exactly do you do, Nick? Just as a refresher.
Yeah, I'm a manager at KPMG Australia. I work in our finance advisory team. And yeah.
That's awesome. So part 1 was kind of like the career progression, kind of Nick as a kid. And then now we're going to go more into the personal life, more hobbies. So yeah. So what happened when you were 15?
When I was 15, I injured myself playing cricket. I had strained my back, so I was a bowler.
Yeah.
And I always liked to do
Were you
fast
any good?
bowling. I was quite good, actually. I played in some representative teams.
very good.
I never got past the sort of regional rep
Yeah.
games, but I was quite good. I could never bat, though. Terrible with the bat. And I'd hurt my back bowling. I'd strained my back. And that same year, I think it was the same year, I'd injured myself in football, soccer, and I'd been tackled from behind and someone took my knee out. So those two injuries sort of culminated in me going, I can't do these dangerous sports anymore. I'm going to hurt myself. So I decided to do full contact karate instead.
Wow, smart. So what was that sort of brain thinking?
Look, my dad is going to say that he always pushed us towards it because he did karate as a kid. But in reality, I just loved Dragon Ball Z growing up. And my brother and I used to fight, Dragon Ball Z style and watch the WWE. And so I've always loved that. And I always used to watch the Bruce Lee movies growing up. So I've always been really into that. And I've always seen the appeal of it. And I've always wanted to say that I could do those things.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. I said, let me see. I've got a lull now. I need to find something new to do. Let me try out karate.
Nice. And did you have other options that you were going to try out? Like BJJ
I did,
or...
yeah. There was a taekwondo place up the road. There was there was a jiu-jitsu place around the corner.
Oh no, wow, you live at like the central martial arts.
And then the closest one was in this little gym just around the corner. It was a karate place.
Yeah.
I thought, karate's high on the list of options. Let me try out this one. And I just happened to pick that one and called the instructor and tried to put me in the kids class. And I said...
Definitely not.
Yeah, I said, no, thank you. I'm going to be in the adult class. And he thought that was hilarious at the time. He told me many years later, he was just like, yeah, I can't believe you said that. I was like, you had no idea what was in for you.
Yeah.
So I joined the adult class I went from there.
And how did you have the confidence to say you just want to be in the adult class?
A big part of it was that, for me at 15 and, going through all these changes and going, out of my old sports into my new sports, I didn't want to get stuck with a class of, young kids and beginners. I kind of wanted to challenge myself and continue to challenge myself. And then that all just became easier because my older sister drove me to my first class. And she was just going to sit there and watch.
Nice.
And she got roped in and started doing the class with me. And she didn't stop for 10 years.
Wow, so good. Nice. Did she beat you up?
Yeah, look, I'd like to say we beat each other up. But, there was a few times where we hit each other.
Because she was like 6 years older.
Yeah. We have this very fond moment of the first time that we really had a sparring session with some of the people in that class. And she was fighting one of our instructors and I was fighting our other instructor.
Nice.
And this is the first time they kind of turned up the heat on us a little bit because we were now, I think we were yellow belts with like a 1 green tip. We've been going for about a year at this point and they were like, okay, it's time to really get into it.
Yeah.
And there's this great moment of both my sister and I hunched over, winded and both spat out our mouth guards on opposite ends of the room, just being like, oh my God, what have we done? This is insane. But hey, we both got up, both put our mouth guards back in and we both got into it.
Yeah, but that's so good. You guys can motivate each other.
Yeah.
Did you guys practice at home?
We did. We absolutely practiced at home. But I think, part of it for me was the fact that if it was a cold winter's night, I'd go into her room and be like, I don't want to go tonight.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, no, we're going.
Oh,
And
so she's the one that was more proactive.
It was a bit of both because there was times where she'd come into my room and be like, I don't really want to go. And I'd be like, no, come on, let's go. And so we'd go. And I just think how many times have we not had each other, would we have just bailed and not gone? And that's just probably dozens and dozens of sessions over the course of 10 years that we probably would have just said, no, I don't want to go. Because we had the motivation of each other going, it really helped us both go.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm thinking about your brother. What happened to him?
My brother has always been the better sports person too, so he was very good at cricket. He played for a long time. He was a very good cricketer. He did. He also had back injuries. And he was very good at football too, but he dropped off with his football as well. I got him to come to one class in karate, but at that point I was already a brown belt, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was quite a bit of a...
Intimidating.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of a different experience for him, him being the beginner.
Yeah.
But he started doing, he met somebody at one of his gyms and he started doing Wing Chun.
Oh, yeah.
So awesome. He started doing that with this guy, and he did it for a couple of years and learned a few things, so he quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's cool. And then take me back to that first karate session. Was it love at first sight?
Yeah, pretty much.
Even though there was these big guys.
Yeah, it was there was huge guys, and there was this tiny little gym room. And what I remember most of it was I probably, despite having played so much sport and doing PE and doing all these things throughout my entire life up until that point, I don't think I had sweated or worked out harder than I did in that class. And I came out at the end of it and just went, I love this. This was amazing. I absolutely loved it. It was nothing I had ever done before. But I could see that it was going to solve a lot of the things that I personally wanted. You know, I was going to learn how to fight and defend myself. I was going to build up even more confidence, and I was already pretty confident. So maybe that was a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd learned to be a little bit stronger and a bit more resilient.
Yeah.
And I think that word resilient was probably the big thing that got me.
Awesome. And how did it compare to cricket and whatnot? Were you still like, oh, I kind of miss bowling?
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't underarm though. That's taboo in Australia.
Oh my gosh, sorry about that.
There's an entire thing about that. You can Google it afterwards.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I definitely did miss it, and I continued to play at school a little bit. For the next year or two, I played in the first 11 and stuff at school afterwards. But it was never the same. It was never the same once I started karate, because I knew that was all going to come to an end, whereas karate was going to continue, even once I left school. So it was definitely probably one of the better decisions I made, and it really did help me through my early 20s, having that there for me while I was doing everything else. It was my gym. It was my version of going to the gym.
Yeah, that's awesome. And sort of what was the training like in the beginning? Were you going a 2 days? Was it a 2-hour sesh or? Yeah,
they were 2 days a week, generally a couple hours a night. So it was 7:30 to 9:30. It was a big time commitment at some times. If you've had a long day, you know, going to a session at 7:30 and training for 2 hours can, for something that's supposed to just be social. Yeah, for something that's supposed to be social, it was quite a lot. And but over the time, depending on if I was doing a grading or if I was moving up the ranks, I went up to 3-4 times a week training, and I used to do sessions on Saturday mornings as well. And depending on what I was training for, it got quite intense.
Yeah, and how was the grading? So what's the first level and then until getting into black belt?
Yeah, it's a long journey, and it's amazing what you see between the journey as you're going. So you go for your yellow, you start as a white belt and you go for your yellow belt when you first grade. And then you go through what they call the Q grades, and there's 10 of those, and so you get a green tip on your yellow belt, then you get 2 green tips, then you get a green belt, brown tip, 2 brown tips, brown belt, black tip, 2 black tips, black belt finally. And you kind of race through those early levels up to about a green belt through your yellow belt pretty fast. You can technically grade 3 times a year at that level, and it's achievable. So, you know, you could go from a white belt to a 2 green tip yellow belt within 1 year. And then generally once you get to green belt and beyond, it starts to slow down a little bit. And so it gets to the point where it's like, oh, you're only going to do 2 gradings this year. Oh, you're only going to do 1 grading this year. And so it does tend to elongate the time. But it's generally, they always say, you know, you can theoretically get from a white belt to a black belt in about 5 years.
Solid.
But that's 5 years of a lot of training. So it took me about 6 years, because I had about a year there where I slowed down for a little bit, 6 or 7 years, and I was never in a rush to get to my black belt. For me, it was all about growing and developing on the journey.
Yeah.
So I stayed as a brown belt for a really long time
Yeah.
in a comparative lifetime. So, and the gradings themselves just got harder and harder every time. So there was a mental drain there as well.
Yeah.
The first grading, you look back on it now and you just go, wow, what was I
Easy.
even complaining about?
Oh.
Because you don't fight in your very first grading either.
What do you do?
You do technical things. So you do
Like
what they
on the
call
spot.
kata, and you do pre-arranged sparring where it's you know what your partner's going to do because he does the same moves.
Yeah.
So you do those in your first grading, and then every grading after that, they add an element of kumite fighting.
Wow.
And it gets progressively harder because the longer you do it and the higher up you are, the more rounds you have to fight for.
Yeah.
So it starts out with about 4 or 5 rounds when you're a yellow belt. By the time you get to doing your black belt, it's like 20 rounds.
Yeah. Do you have any memorable grading?
Yes. It's not a belt grading, it was my black gi. So the gi is what you wear. You wear a white gi most of the time, and formally you always wear a white gi. But my club itself had a special grading called the black gi grading. And I did that when I was 20 years old, and
So young.
it was very brutal. I've always warned against anyone wanting to just do that sort of grading because it was intense.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest mental challenge that I've had to overcome, as well as physical challenge of my life. I trained for months. I stopped drinking alcohol. I was training.
Dedicated.
Yeah, I was training 3 to 4 times a week, plus Saturday mornings.
No.
And for me, I was like, this is getting towards sort of semi-professional athletics, the sort of level of training that I was doing, hours at a time, hours and hours and hours and hours per week. And when we got to this grading, there was this intentional uncertainty about it. Unlike every other grading where they told you what you had to do, in this grading they did not tell you what was going to happen beforehand. So unless you had seen one of these gradings, you would not know what was going to happen. And this was the first one my club had done in about 5 years. So I had witnessed one when I first joined, but most of that I'd forgotten about. And so yeah, it was a 3-hour affair. We did a lot of that kumite, a lot of the kata, a lot of the up and down the room, very high intensity. You were sweating like crazy within the first 30 minutes. Then you did back and forth pre-arranged fighting with some people. And then it culminated before we went into spa. They brought out these roof tiles.
Yeah.
And they brought out 3 roof tiles about that thick onto concrete cinder blocks. And they laid it there, and in order to progress to the sparring, you had to break them. And you had basically one go per set. So if you didn't get through all 3 in the first go, they'd reset it and put 3 back on. So you had to get through all 3 in one go. And so we stood there, me and 2 other guys, and they'd been training with me the whole time. We stood there in the row, and we just went bang, and we went through it all in one go.
Wow. So pretty successful.
Yeah, it was probably the biggest adrenaline rush
Yeah.
I've ever had. It was just insane, the adrenaline rush, because the instructor and everyone is really hyping you up for it as you go in there, because it's not easy to do, but at the same time, if you really concentrate hard on doing it, it is easy. But how often do you sort of run into a concrete wall? You know,
Yeah.
You can actually create quite a dent if you really try.
Wow.
And then we started the sparring, and that was about an hour and a half of sheer pain, and it was tough.
And that was the worst part, right? That was the hardest.
Absolutely. At that point, you were tired physically,
Yeah.
and the idea is that they tire you out physically before you even start the sparring. And so we were tired physically going into the sparring, and there was 3 of us and about 20 people who had previously done this grading, and they rotated between themselves. And each round I had a fresh black belt, black gi person standing in front of me ready to go, and they would fight me. And it was about 2 minutes per round, 2 or 3 minutes per round, and we just kept going and going and going, and there was 20 odd rounds.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
I was about 2 rounds in where I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I just said, I cannot do this. I got absolutely destroyed in that round, and I was like, this is round 2 of 20.
Yeah.
And in fact, I didn't actually know if there was 20 rounds. That was just our estimate.
Yeah.
It could have been 18, it could have been 25. It was all up to our instructor to just call time.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, this is round 2 of however many.
Yeah.
I can't do this. And I was standing in the middle between my friends, and I looked to my right, and one of them was just shattered like I was, and the one to the other side was also shattered with a big bag of ice on his head, looking really destroyed, and he had copped a back fist to his head in that round and was just getting ice on his head. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm better than him.
Yeah.
And I'm just as bad as him. So it was actually just that moment that just went, oh. And so there was a few more times through the course of that, and I could not tell you what happened for most of that sparring session. It's all just a blur to me. But there was a few times where I'd look left, look right, and be like, right, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because they're looking just as bad still. And you just kind of got on with it. Every round you put your hands up, you fought, you got to the end, you stopped, and then you'd try again.
Wow.
And you just kept going.
And did anyone quit?
No, nobody quit. Both my parents rocked up, my brother and my sister both rocked up, so we had a bit of a crowd there. They were all watching, and my mum said that she just sat there the whole time horrified, like,
Yeah.
just like, I can't watch
What did
this.
I sign you up for?
Yeah, this is ridiculous. I can't watch this. Whereas my sister, who had been doing karate with me for a long time, she said she was sitting there like getting all anxious and being like, dodge,
Yeah.
move, punch him down. You know, what are you doing? And she was really getting into it, watching it happen. But it was incredible. And, you know, we finished it. We all got down on one knee and got to put on our black gis for the first time.
Just like that?
At the end, yep. They hand you it right then and there. And
that's beautiful.
we all put it on, and they all embrace you, and you know, it's all a big group hug. And then my sister came over and hugged me, and I burst out in tears. I was completely fine. The other 2 guys who I did this with were like best mates as well.
Yeah.
So when they had a hug at the end, they both cried.
Yeah.
And then I was just standing there, and then my sister came over, and I just went bang. And the emotion levels were so high at this point. And so yeah, you know, it was just the ultimate high, and then you went home and you were just a sore, broken body.
Yeah. And the crying, was it relief? Was it happiness? Was it?
Yeah, I think it was relief.
my gosh.
We were in such a heightened emotional and like mentally stimulated state for such a long period of time that moment of it's over, it's actually over. And because in the lead up to it, the training was all part of the journey for this. You know, they announce it about 3 months early too. So they do that intentionally so that you don't have a massive chance to train. You only get a couple of months. And so you got to switch into gear straight away, make lifestyle changes and really go for it. So that was, I think that's going to stick with me my entire life.
Probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And tell me about the post-recovery. How broken was broken?
I was sore. Funny enough, they always have like parties after these events.
Oh,
so we all went home. I'm like sitting in the shower destroyed. And then I went and had a lie down and headaches and everything was just bad.
Did you get like bashed in the head multiple
Yeah, quite a few times. I copped quite a few head knocks.
Yeah.
And you know, you're
That's worse
bruising
than
around your
cricket.
body. Yeah, absolutely. But 15-year-old me didn't think that.
Yeah.
And bruised all around my body. And then, yeah, I went to sleep, woke back up and went to this party that night, which was our celebration for us. And
Yeah, can't
we
not
were
go.
the quietest ones there. You know, we were just kind of like sitting there with a beer going, oh my gosh, everyone else can be running around and having a great time. I'm struggling to hold this up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow. And tell me about breaking the roof tiles. How much does it hurt? And do you have very serious...
If you do it the right way, it's completely fine.
we got a few tables here. No,
Yeah. Those ones collapse. That should be fine.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, you hit with the ball of your hand there and you kind of go through. And as long as your arm is straight as you come down and you put your whole body weight on it, you can stop a lot of damage. I think what a lot of people think is that you see it in the movies, the karate chops. You know, that's just all your arm. It's really got nothing to do with your arm. It's all about your whole body
That's
going
true.
with gravity down. And as long as you get that point and it's straight up, it's not going to cause any damage, so you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't recommend just trying it.
Yeah, okay. A casual get together.
Yeah, I wouldn't, because you also got to get the right type of roof tiles too. Otherwise, you're just going to be hitting concrete, and that's just bad. That's just a bad idea.
Yeah. And what is your favourite karate trick that you could do, or still can do maybe?
one of my favourite ones, just because it looks cool, is we've got this thing where you do these three types of karate chops, and you sort of you throw one from one side, one on the other side, and one on the third side, and the idea is that you're actually hitting the same part of the body 3 times.
Oh.
And you can do it in really rapid succession if you throw them
cool.
properly. And it's my 3 karate chops, and you go really fast in one motion and can cause quite a lot of damage, I'm sure. I've never tried doing it on him. It's more flashy than anything else.
Yeah.
But it is quite good. But that's probably one of my favourite ones to do, just because it looks cool.
Yeah, and on the same spot, like people won't expect it.
Yeah, that's it. You sort of hit the same side of the face 3 times in a row in the same spot.
Oh, the face.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody would not be enjoying it if they actually got hit by it.
Yeah, and then tell me the sad news of when you decided to give it up. And was that a hard decision?
It was. And look, it still is. I even still think about, do I go back and rejoin it now?
Yeah, because you almost got to sensei. Tell them more.
That's it. I became a second Dan black belt, and I was probably doing that second Dan for a couple of years, and I was getting ready. I was probably about a year away from commencing my journey to becoming a third Dan, which would make me a sensei. And once you're a sensei, you are a teacher, and you can theoretically start your own karate club. And it's
your next teaching career.
Yeah, that's it. It's a big thing. But I ended up moving to the north side away from it all, and work started getting quite crazy. And like I said, the time commitment of it was quite a lot. It wasn't like you can do a 20-minute workout session after work, or you can do a half an hour before work. The lifestyle of it all wasn't quite aligning to where my life was heading at the time. And I just found it getting harder and harder and harder to fit it in alongside everything else. And so I started going less and less. And the unfortunate part about it is the less you go, the harder it is to go.
It is.
Because you kind of got to stay within the ecosystem to keep up the specific type of fitness you need. And it becomes quite hard. And I really got into my running at that time. So, I was kind of replacing it with my running, and here we are. I haven't really done it now for about a year and a half.
Yeah, still quite fresh.
But I mean, I find myself going around the house, and every now and then I'm like, I'll do a little bit of kicking, and
that's so cute.
My partner's looking at me going, well, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, never mind.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and now on to the next topic, travel. Tell me more about travel.
Yes, I've always loved travel. As a kid, my first overseas holiday was Bali when I was like 5 years old, and I said I absolutely loved it. Mum said, how do you know? You slept the whole trip? And I said, no, I absolutely loved it. And then we did a lot of travel around this region. We did New Zealand, Fiji, Bali a second time. I got to go to Japan on a school trip, which was one of my absolute core memories. I absolutely loved that trip. First time overseas by myself or without my parents. We went to China, and I stopped in Singapore. We did this region, and then I just stopped traveling for quite a long time. And it was just life at that point. I was starting uni and starting work. I was going through uni and the rest of school, and it was just hard to justify.
Poor student.
I didn't have any money as a uni student, so. But then I got my job at KPMG, and I knew I'm about to start my corporate world. So I did my last shift at Woolies on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, and then was like, I'm done, resign, and I didn't start my KPMG job for 3 months.
Sick.
So I said, I'm getting on a plane, and I think it was the 3rd of January, I got on a plane, went over to Europe for a solo trip. I did a Contiki through all of the major European countries, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Switzerland.
Wow.
I kept going, Austria, Czech Republic. It was a massive 30-day Contiki tour all around those regions, and I just had an absolute blast, and just had an absolute fantastic time going to all these different countries. And
do you have a favourite?
I loved
memory?
Prague.
Why is that?
Czech Republic. It was just, for starters, it was one of the coldest, which was just a novelty. It was negative 15 degrees for the daytime, which was great. But I don't know, it was just the vibe of the place. It was quiet. Maybe it was, it was snowing and it was cold. I got the feeling of just this cold winters city, and it was just this really nice, exciting little place, even though it was quite cold and bleak. But yeah, that was up there, but there was just so many places I loved. I loved Rome, and I loved Barcelona, and saw a football game in Barcelona.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
yeah, we did all those little things that just really made it one of the most incredible trips ever. And then I dropped off the Kentucky tour and I went by myself through the UK. So I did the UK, where I've got family in Manchester, stayed with them for a few days, and then I went up into Scotland, and I found myself out in the vast wilderness of Scotland. Went as far north as I could probably go by myself in the winter with no car or anything. Ended up in the Isle of Skye, and I was travelling by myself there. And I didn't have a lot of plans. I'd book accommodation a day before and transport plans day of, and it was right at my second last day. I thought, I'll just get on a plane and fly back instead of getting the train back this time. And everything was just last minute on that trip. So.
And did you ever get to use your karate skills?
No, I never needed them, but I felt very confident walking around.
Wow, Senpai Nick.
Yeah. And then it was about 5 years until I travelled again, which was this year. COVID obviously didn't help.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd been planning on going and I never did. And it was 5 years, and I went on a big European holiday this year with my partner, and that was a lot of fun. And I'm off to Singapore in a couple of weeks.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
And maybe Adelaide.
Maybe Adelaide too, but that's a work trip. So,
I know. Had to throw that in.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So we only have 2 minutes left. So the rapid fire questions. So Nick, what do you think the meaning of life is for you?
Well, that's a really hard one. Meaning of life for me is teaching, giving back, and making it better for the next generation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what is an ideal day in the life for you? It can be work-related, it could be non-work-related.
Ideal day in the life for me is getting up, going on like a really long hike somewhere just out in the wilderness, coming home. It's like lunchtime, you can take a nap, and then I just get to have like a nice meal in the afternoon, and I'm really destroyed, and then you get back into bed. And it's the most comfortable sleep that you've ever had. That's one of my favourite days.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you won the lottery, what would you do differently about your life?
Wouldn't say anything for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd just keep working, but with a little smug grin the entire time. People be wondering why I was getting all these nice things and why I've got some holidays booked. And, like people would be really curious.
Annual leave.
Yeah, they'd be like, what are you doing? Why are things different in your life? Why are you moving again? So I wouldn't do anything straight away. But a big thing for me is just I ultimately would love to be able to just get some sort of place in the country, which is maintained by somebody else, but it's my place to go to, and have like small amount of farming animals and like the garden areas and everything like that, and have that like cottage vibe. I'd absolutely love to have something like that if I won the lotto.
That's such a nice like little retreat.
And ultimately, I would have to do nothing there, obviously, because I won the lotto. I'm going to pay people to handle all of the stuff.
Gardening,
that is painful.
cooking, cleaning.
Yeah, I'll keep cooking. I like cooking.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I absolutely love chatting to you, Nick, and learning so much about you, and would never want to fight you. Would never want to piss you off.
No, it's fine. We practice restraint, so that's the idea. We never want to fight. We just know how to fight.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's been really good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Do you want to say bye?
See you later. Bye.
Bye.